plan with the so-called soft underbelly of Europe has been very popular in the region ever since we first found out about it. It is for us here in Poland and the region generally quite unfortunate that it didn't materialize. However, it did have some effect on later strategic planning of the war. There is, for example, the famous episode with Central and Eastern Europe being carved up, so to say, between Stalin and the Western Allies, and there is the famous story of how it was really written down on a piece of napkin in percentages where which of the two players will have more influence, and the only real place Poland was left out of it because technically Poland was the fate of Poland was supposed to be decided in elections simply after the war. But Churchill, remembering this soft belly, he had Greece in mind, of course. So the only country where the Western Allies demanded more influence than the Russians was in Greece. So they did keep an eye on parts of the soft underbelly of Europe, but naturally Greece, being a country with a coastline, it was much easier
and the Mediterranean coastline as well, of course.
A Mediterranean coastline,
and Churchill, I think,
and old interests.
Flew to Greece in Christmas Day 1944, when it was looking that the internal Greek politics might have produced a result which was not really to the liking of the Western power. So I suppose, in a funny sort of way, maybe at that time one man can only do so much, and maybe Churchill took the decision, well, I have to either go there or there, well, I'm going to go there, because ultimately that's going to be more important to us.
Also, the British, they had long-standing interests in that part of the Mediterranean, everything from Corfu to Cyprus. So it was clear that they wouldn't be willing to give that away easily to the Soviet Union. And later, when the Reds were launching their offensives in 44, in 45, and 46, and in general in the 1940s, it was quite an unstable time. They could always count on receiving support from the British security services, and it did work out. As a complete side note, it could be worth mentioning that Poland, having ended up behind the wrong side of the Iron Curtain, so to say, due to, as you mentioned earlier, that there were simply too many Red Army soldiers that were stationed here in the country, and they decided the outcome of the war. But Poland, therefore falling under communism, they were the ideological allies of those defeated elements in Greece, the red elements that were defeated in this joint effort by Greek forces that were Western allied and their Western allies. So some of those communist elements from Greece, they had to flee their country, and many of them actually ended up in Poland in the 50s and 60s, leaving somewhat of a Greek influence on our cuisine, for example. I'm sure all the Poles know what fish Greek style, for example, means. It is one of those things that have been left behind by history, but that's as a complete side note. Most of the Greeks, they returned to Greece later on, either during the 70s, 80s, or some of them after the fall of communism. So the Greeks that stayed in Poland for a longer period of time, it was quite a small number. But when we look again at how history is being played out here with this attack in Belgorod, it is also another case from history that we can see that when one power is under pressure somewhere, it is always a good idea to strike behind enemy lines in some unexpected location, often on territory that is viewed as somehow crucial territory for the attacking power. That if they don't react toward it, then they lose legitimacy in the eyes of their own people. This is something that happens quite frequently, and now the Russians, they will also have to be faced with this very difficult decision. Do we continue with our troop concentration in the area of Bakhmut and try to press on? Or do we dispatch some of those forces to secure our own Russian territory in order to avoid similar activities in the future that will be, they simply won't do well for Putin's political standing in Russia itself.
Adam, alas, we've been defeated by the clock in the corner of the studio, so I'm going to have to ask you to pause there, but we will pick it up next time. Alas, I've had to interrupt Adam almost in mid-sentence, but fear not, if you join us next time on Poland Daily History, as I hope you will, we'll pick up the story. In the meantime, thank you for watching.